This is the ninth Tuesday we talk about how love goes on. The leaves had begun to change colors, turning the ride through West Newton into the portrait of gold and rust. Back in Detroit, the labor war had stagnated, with each side accusing the other of failing to communicate. The stories on the TV news were just as depressing. In rural Kentucky, three men threw pieces of a tombstone off a bridge, bashing the windshield of a passing car, killing a teenage girl who was traveling with her family on a religious pilgrimage. In California, the O.J. Simpson trial had been heading toward a conclusion, and the whole country seemed to be obsessed. Even in the airports, they were hanging TV sets turned to CNN so you get an OJ update as you were on your way to your gate. I had tried calling my brother in Spain several times. I left messages saying that I really wanted to talk to him and that I had been doing a lot of thinking about us. A few weeks later, I got back a short message saying everything was okay, but he was sorry and he really didn't feel like talking about being sick. For my old professor, it was not the talk of being sick, but the being sick itself that was sinking him. Since my last visit, a nurse had inserted a catheter into his privates, which drew the urine out through a tube and into the bag that sat at the foot of his chair. His legs needed constant tending. He could still feel pain, even though he could not move them. Another one of ALS's cruel little ironies. And unless his feet dangled just at the right number of inches off the foam pad, it felt as if someone were poking him with a fork. In the middle of conversations, Maury would have to ask visitors to lift his foot and move it an inch, or just adjust his head so that it would fit more easily into the palm of the colored pillow. Can you imagine being unable to move your own head? With each visit, Maury seemed to be melting into his chair, his spine taking on its shape. Still, every morning he insisted on being lifted from his bed and wheeled to his study, deposited there among his books and papers and the hibiscus plant on the windowsill. In typical fashion, he found something philosophical in this. I sum it up with my newest aphorism, he said. Let me hear it. When you're in bed, you're dead. He smiled. Only Maury could smile at something like that. He'd been getting calls from the Nightline people and from Ted Koppel himself. They want to come and do another show with me, he said, but they say they want to wait. Until what? You're on your last breath? Maybe. Anyhow, I'm not so far away. Don't say that. I'm sorry. That bugs me, that they want to wait until you wither. It bugs you because you look out for me, he smiled. Mitch, maybe they are using me for a little drama. That's okay. Maybe I'm using them too. They help me get my message to millions of people. I couldn't do it without them, right? So it's compromise. He coughed, which turned into a long, drawn out gargle, ending with another glob into a crushed tissue. Anyhow, Maury said, I told them they better not wait too long because my voice won't be there. Once this thing hits my lungs, talking may become impossible. I can't speak for too long without needing a rest. I've already canceled a lot of people who want to see me. Mitch, there's so many. But I'm too fatigued. If I can't give them the right attention, I can't help them. I looked at the tape recorder, feeling guilty, as if I were stealing what was left of his precious time. Should we skip it? I asked. Will it make you too tired? Maury shut his eyes and shook his head. He seemed to be waiting for some silent pain to pass. No, he finally said. You and I have to go on. This is our last thesis together, you know. Our last thesis. We want to get it right. I thought about our first thesis together in college. It was Maury's idea, of course. He told me I was good enough to write an honors project, something I'd never considered. Now, here we are doing the same thing once more, starting with an idea. Dying man talks to living man, tells him what he should know. This time, I was in less of a hurry to finish. Someone asked me an interesting question yesterday, Maury said, now looking over my shoulder at the wall hanging behind me, a quilt of hopeful messages of friends that had stitched for him on his 70th birthday. Each patch on the quilt had a different message. Stay the course. The best is yet to come. Maury, number one in mental health. What was the question? I asked. If I worried about being forgotten when I die. Well, do you? I don't think I will be. I've got so many people who have been involved with me in close, intimate ways, and love is how you easily stay alive even after you're gone. Sounds like a song lyric. Love is how you stay alive, Maury chuckled. Maybe. But Mitch, all this talk that we're doing, do you ever hear my voice sometimes when you're back home, when you're all alone? Maybe on the plane, maybe in the car? Yes, I admitted. Then you will not forget me after I'm gone. Think of my voice and I'll be there. Think of your voice. And if you want to cry a little, that's okay too. Maury, he wanted to make me cry since I was a freshman. One of these days I'm going to get you, he said. Yeah, I would answer. I decided what I wanted on my tombstone, he said. I don't want to hear about tombstones. Why? Do they make you nervous? I shrugged. We can forget it. No, no, go ahead. What did you decide? Maury popped his lips. I was thinking of this. A teacher to the last. He waited while I absorbed it. A teacher to the last. Good, he said. Yes, I said. Very good. I came to love the way Maury lit up when I entered the room. He did this for many people I know, but it was his special talent to make each visitor feel like the smile was unique. Ah, it's my buddy, he would say when he saw me in that foggy, high-pitched voice. It didn't stop with the greeting. When Maury was with you, he was really with you. He looked at you straight in the eye, and he listened as if he were the only person in the world. How much better would people get along in their first encounter each day was like this, instead of a grumble from a waitress or a bus driver or a boss? I believe in being fully present, Maury said. That means you should be with the person you're with. When I'm talking to you now, Mitch, I try to focus only on what is going on between us. I'm not thinking about something else we said last week. I'm not thinking of what's coming up this Friday, and I'm not thinking about another couple show or about the medications that I'm taking. I'm talking to you and I'm thinking about you. I remember how he used to teach this idea in the group process class back at Brandeis. I had scoffed back then, thinking this was hardly a lesson plan for a university course. Learning to pay attention? How important could that be? I now know it was the most important thing they taught us in college. Maury motioned for my hand, and as I gave it to him, I felt a surge of guilt. Here was a man who, if he wanted, could spend every waking moment in self pity, feeling his body for decay, counting his breaths. So many people with far smaller problems are so self absorbed. Their eyes glazed over for you, um, speak for more than 30 seconds. They already have something else in mind, a friend to call, a fax to send, a lover they're daydreaming about. The only snap back to full attention is when you're finished talking, at which point they say, uh huh, or yeah, really, and they fake their way back into the moment. Part of the problem, Mitch, is that everyone is in such a hurry, Maury said. People haven't found the meaning in their lives, so they're running all the time looking for it. They think the next car, the next house, the next job, then they find those things and they're empty too, and they keep running. Once you start running, I said, it's hard to slow yourself down. Not so hard, he said, shaking his head. Do you know what I do? When someone wants to get ahead of me in traffic, when I used to be able to drive, I would raise my hand, and he tried to do this now, but the hand lifted weakly, only about 6 inches. I would raise my hand up if I was going to make a negative gesture, and then I would wave and smile. Instead of giving them the finger, you'd let them go and you smile. You know what? A lot of times they smiled back. The truth is, I don't have to be in much of a hurry with my car. I would rather put my energies into people. He did this better than anyone I've ever known before. Those who sat with him saw his eyes go moist when they spoke about something horrible, or crinkle in delight when they told a really bad joke. He was always ready to openly display the emotion so often missing from my baby boomer generation. We are great at small talk. What do you do? Where do you live? But really listening to someone without trying to sell them something, pick them up, recruit them, or get some kind of status in return, how often do we get this anymore? I believe many visitors in the last few months of Maury's life were drawn not because of the attention they wanted to pay him, but because of the attention he paid to them. Despite his personal pain and decay, the little old man listened the way uh, they always wanted someone to listen. I told him he was the father everyone wishes they had. Well, he said, closing his eyes, I have some experience in that area. The last time Maury saw his own father was in the city morgue. Charlie Schwartz was a quiet man who liked to read his newspaper, alone under a street lamp on Tremont Avenue in the Bronx. Every night when Maury was little, Charlie would go for a walk after dinner. He was a small Russian man with a ruby complexion and a full head of grayish hair. Maury and his brother David would look out the window and see him leaning against the lamp post, and Maury wished he would come inside and talk to them, but he rarely did. Nor did he tuck them in, nor did he kiss them good night. Maury always swore he would do these things for his own children if he ever had any, and years later, when he had them, he did. Meanwhile, as Maury raised his own children, Charlie was still living in the Bronx. He still took the walk, he still read the paper, and one night he went outside after dinner, a few blocks from home, and he was accosted by two robbers. Give us your money, one said, pulling a gun. Frightened, Charlie threw down his wallet and began to run. He ran through the streets and kept running until he reached the steps of a relative's house where he collapsed on the porch. Heart attack. He died that night. Maury called to identify the body. He flew to New York and went to the morgue, and he was taken downstairs to a cold room where the corpses were kept. Is this your father? The attendant said. Maury looked at the body behind the glass and the body of the man who had scolded him and molded him and taught him to work, who had been quiet when Maury wanted to speak, and who had told Maury to swallow his memories of his mother when he wanted to share them with the world. He nodded and walked away. The horror of the room, he would say later, sucked all of the functions out of him. He did not cry until days later. Still, his father's death helped prepare Maury for his own. This much he knew. There would be lots of holding and kissing and talking and laughter, and no goodbyes left unsaid. All the things he missed with his father and his mother. When the final moments came, Maury wanted his loved ones around him, knowing what was happening. No one would get a phone call or a telegram or have to look through a glass window in some cold and foreign basement. Here's the flashback. In the South American rainforest, there's a tribe called Dasana, who sees the world as a fixed quantity of energy that flows between all creatures. Every birth must therefore engender a death, and every death bring forth another birth. This way, the energy of the world remains complete. When they hunt for food, the Dasana knows that the animals they kill will leave a hole in the spiritual well, but the hole will be filled, they believe, by the souls of the Dasana hunters when they die. When were there no men dying, there would be no birds or fish being born. I like this idea, and Maury does too. The closer he gets to goodbye, the more he seems to feel we are all creatures in the same forest. What we take, we must replenish. It's only fair, he says.